Howdy tubers, welcome back to the Zach Life. So this Zach Life episode is going to be all about my rock crawler. This thing's been sitting a couple of years. This is actually going to be its maiden voyage, if you would, since about 2 years ago. I tore the rear end up in it. That's what most of this video is going to be about, is actually rebuilding the rear end. But I want to kind of give you an overview of it, tell you sort of how it works, or at least what it is. And then I'm gonna cut to about a month ago when I actually rebuilt the rear end. As a lot of y'all probably know, if you watch my other videos, my dog just passed away a few days ago, and him getting sick and all, it kind of intersects this video. And so about a month ago, right before I realized that he was sick, is actually when this video started. But I'm shooting the intro, and then we're gonna cut back to actually work on the axle a month ago. And then I had to deal with him for a couple of weeks and jump back forward, and then here we are again. And I would like to come back and go over all the you know, how you drive it, how it works, all the details about it. So anyway, to start off, this thing has got a set of Super Duty axles, like 2005 and newer, front and rear. It's front and rear steer. It's all hydraulic controlled. Let's get over here and get a picture of the engine. So here it is. This thing's got a twin turbo small block on propane. And this is a pretty well stock engine with, I think that it's probably got a mild camshaft in it, what people call an RV cam, you know, what the heck ever that means. But a mild camshaft with these little set of K25 turbochargers on them. This is not a high horsepower build. I wanted to make about 400 horsepower, and I wanted to be able to do it in high altitude. The turbochargers and all this is set up specifically to make this thing run good in high altitude. It's got a reverse pattern manual valve body 700 R4 transmission, which means that when you pull it toward drive, usually would be is actually first gear, and as you come on back, it goes second, third, fourth, and whatever gear you put it in is what gear it stays in. It won't shift gears. You can shift it under power, but at a dead stop, if you pull it back all the way to overdrive, it'll actually take off in overdrive. So anyway, that's a quick overview. It's a twin turbo small block 700 R4 transmission, Super Duty axles on air shocks. Let's get back to a month or so ago, whenever that was, and I want to actually rebuild the rear end in this thing. If you don't want to watch that, you can skip forward to
12 minutes and 7 seconds,
and that'll take you back to where we come back here, and then I'm going to get in it, take you for a ride, and we're going to explain all the controls, how it all works, and then go play with it and do some donuts. So what I've got here is a set of RCV Dana 60, late model Dana 60 CV axles. And these are supposed to be as good as you get and indestructible. I'm going to start off with a montage of me struggling to unload this off my trailer. I want to have a video like probably next week of loading the trailer, because I think the trailer is probably cool as a rock crawler. But I didn't have, the rear wheels wouldn't pull because I had an axle shaft twisted off, and then this brake on this side was froze up, and it just turned out to be quite a mess. So what actually happened here is this yoke broke, and it wadded this stuff up, and it pushed the ball joints apart, and you're fixing to see, I think, when I hit this, well, maybe not quite. Yeah. the ball joints here are all apart. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the ball joints. There she goes. It's home. it's got like a snap ring. It's not really a snap ring, it's like a wire snap ring. I'm sure that these two pieces spline together. Was that it? Huh. Simple as that. Now it's got this orange piece here. I'm gonna smear a little of this grease around here. I don't see any way to install this other than just forcibly shoving it on here. Just like that, I guess. So these seals in these Super Duty axles are important, even if you don't run vacuum hubs, because this is actually what keeps watered mud out of the backside of the wheel bearing. So I'm going to installize this. I've got this driver, this tool made. It's actually made to install these things. I guess that's what this tool is for. It's like a big pry bar to pry this out, and you can drive the seal home. When you get done, it should look just like that, with this seal driven up all the way on there, and the actual seal can move around. I don't know if you can see that. Inside here there's a snap ring that goes in there that's a pain. All right. Thanks, Cole. Hey, get in here. Come on. Okay, I'm going to do the other side, and it's probably going to be, it's only 4:30. I might get it done. I don't have to change ball joints over there. I feel like the first thing I need to do is go over this 20 odd switches that are on here, 21 switches. I know this looks ridiculous, but they all have a reason. They're all here for a reason. These top 4 switches, as I mentioned, it's 4-wheel steer, and these top 4 switches actually control the steering. So anyway, we've got a master kill. If you turn this switch off, this eliminates all of the steering control that's electric, including the front and rear. The only thing that works is when you turn the steering wheel, it steers the front end. That's kind of a safety feature. Anyway, we'll turn this on, and when this button here causes, this is what controls the rear steer. This button here actually reverses this button and the steering wheel. So if you hold this button up, you now can control the front end. Vice versa, if you turn the steering wheel, it now controls the rear end. Now this switch down here is actually a lockout, and what I use this for, it's kind of hard to explain. but there's a set of double-ended check valves that's on the rear end. And if you flip this up, when you kick the rear end kind of locks, and it puts hydraulic pressure on both sides of the steering cylinder of the rear axle. And what this does is, it used to have trouble if you use the rear steer and went down the road, it would have a little bit of air in it, and you would sort of get a death wobble in the rear end, if you would, and it never would just sort of get out of control, but the rear end would shift back and forth around. It made it kind of hard to drive. These next three switches are actually not used, and what I want to use them for is I plan on putting a 4L60E transmission in this thing, and I'd like to be able to shift this thing with these two switches. And I know that sounds complicated, but you can do it. There's only actually two shift solenoids in a 4L60E, and I'd like to be able to shift it first, second, third, and then back to fourth with these toggle switches instead of having to do it with a shifter. As I said, it's a full manual valve body, so you have to shift every gear in the transmission. And the third switch is going to control the lockup, and it actually already does control the lockup. If you turn it on and put the transmission in gear, it'll just kill the motor like letting the clutch out. These next set of switches, this first one here is actually a high idle. It's a slightly higher idle. You can just barely hear a difference probably. And that's pretty handy. A lot of times if you're trying to maneuver it, bring the idle up just a little bit while it's in gear. You got all the lights on, it kind of pulls the motor down. It gives the hydraulics enough power to control the axles and move the steering a little bit better. And if you need to charge your battery up if your battery's low, that's a handy switch to have. The next one is the horn. The actual horn, I guess, has quit working. The next one is a propane primer. It works sort of like a choke. It'll usually kill the engine. I guess it's warm enough it's not going to die. This switch here is the master to the winches, and so there's a winch on the front, and then this next switch here actually is a radio control winch that's on the trailer. I'll have to show you that and explain it another day. So I've actually put a switch for the winch right here. And that's a really, really handy deal. Instead of having to have someone else grab the winch and you work in there to work it and run the wrong way and wad their finger or something up in it, you can just have whoever runs the winch to run the winch. And if you're by yourself, it makes it that much easier. You're probably getting where you can't see. There's actually another switch back here. I don't know if you can see it. It's so bright out here, it's hard to see what's on the camera. This is what controls the front hubs. Now this front hubs on a Ford is engaged and disengaged by different pressures of vacuum, and I've actually just got the Ford module that Ford uses in like a new, 2000, well, I don't know, 10-year-old Super Duty that actually controls either, it gives either 12 points of vacuum or it gives 6 points of vacuum. 12 points kicks it in, 6 kicks it out. Anyway, when you want to kick the front end in, obviously you got to put the transfer case in the four-wheel drive, but you'll just simply hold up on this switch and count to about 3 or 4, and that will actually spring load latch the front hubs, and even if they don't go in when you're sitting still, as you roll forward, a spring catches them in. To disengage, you do the same thing. You pull down and count to about 4 or 5, and then sort of when you get the bind off of it, they'll kick out. This next row of switches is all lights. We've got the headlights, the marker lights. This is a big light strip that's on the front. These are peripheral lights right here. Can you see me? There's one that goes this way, one that goes that way. There's 4 light bars underneath it, light up what you're crawling around on. There's one big light on the back, and then the last switch is actually, there's a RV plug, like if you pull a trailer with it, and the last switch actually turns the reverse lights on that would be in the plug for the trailer. So right in here, this is actually all the hydraulic controls. These are all DO6 style valves with all the lines and electronics and stuff. It's all right there in one little package. Go over the rest of the dash real quick. We got charging current, engine oil pressure, engine water temperature, volts, tachometer. This is an absolute manifold pressure gauge. This is reading ambient air pressure. And this actually will move depending on your altitude. It's kind of neat, but this has got one needle that actually reads fuel pressure, which is gaseous propane, and the other one reads manifold pressure. So to start it up, we get a manifold vacuum, and as you gas it, that comes up. Speedometer, this has actually got two batteries. This is the main battery, and then right behind me in the seat's a place you can plug a second battery in, and you can actually switch it to both and use this to charge another battery. I got a radio that's never been hooked up, and this is a transmission oil pressure. Transfer case, this is 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, neutral, and low range. And of course the transmission is reverse, neutral, first, second, third, fourth.
Well, there you go.